Serdecznie zapraszam na pierwszą lekcję online Ministerstwa Edukacji i Nauki, lekcję biznesu i zarządzania. Lekcję, którą poprowadził kto? Gigant z Doliny Krzemowej, Steve Wozniak, założyciel Apple. Warto posłuchać doświadczeń tego znakomitego menadżera i przedsiębiorcy.
Dzień dobry wszystkim. Ja nazywam się Justyna Orłowska i jestem już w tym momencie byłym pełnomocnikiem premiera do spraw GovTech oraz pełnomocnikiem ministra edukacji i nauki do spraw transformacji cyfrowej. Obecnie studiuję na Uniwersytecie w Princeton, ale przyjechałam tutaj specjalnie po to, aby przeprowadzić pierwsze zajęcia ze znakomitym gościem oraz właśnie z uczestnictwem waszym, mam nadzieję aktywnym uczestnictwem, ponieważ będzie to wyjątkowa okazja, żeby zadać znakomitemu gościowi pytania, które was właśnie intrygują, dotyczące czego? Nowego przedmiotu biznes i zarządzanie. Biznes i zarządzanie od tego roku wszedł właśnie do szkół ponadpodstawowych w Polsce. Jest to przedmiot, na którym właśnie reformą, którego pracowaliśmy ostatnie 1,5 roku tutaj w ministerstwie oraz w Centrum GovTech, po to, aby wynieść go na wyższy poziom, praktyczny poziom. Poziom, który właśnie sprawi, że będziecie po ukończeniu szkoły ponadpodstawowej, czy liceum, czy technikum, mieli, mam nadzieję, chęć do tego, aby założyć biznes, aby być menadżerami, czy być świetnymi uczestnikami i właśnie tych różnych projektów, które wymyślicie albo które ktoś wymyśli z was, bo tak naprawdę każda kompetencja w zespole jest kluczowa i każdy z was ma supermoce. O tych supermocach będzie opowiadał nasz znakomity gość, o którym zaraz właśnie zobaczycie filmik. Podpowiem tylko, że jest to osoba, która doprowadziła do tego, była współzałożycielem bilionowej spółki, którą znacie znakomicie i myślę, że jej produkty nawet są obecne w waszych kieszeniach w tym momencie. Mowa oczywiście o firmie Apple, firmie, której nie trzeba nikomu przedstawiać, a jej współzałożycieli także nie trzeba przedstawiać. Wiemy, jak ma na imię, jak mieli na imię, bo mieli tak samo na imię, nazwiska inne i jedno z tych nazwisk ma polskie korzenie. I właśnie to jest osoba, którą zaraz tutaj zobaczycie, Steve Wozniak. Zapraszam do obejrzenia krótkiego filmu.
Oh Lord, look who it is.
Is that Steve Wozniak?
I think it is. The great and powerful Woz.
One of the co-founders of Apple Computer. He and Steve Jobs started
Yeah, I
it.
know who he is. I watched Dancing with the Stars.
Steve Wozniak, best known as the co-founder of Apple Computer along with Steve Jobs. But it was the Woz alone who built the first personal computer, the Apple I, and later the Apple II, the device that launched the personal computer revolution.
I said, hey, Woz, come over and meet Steve. So Steve meets Steve. And this is where it happened.
Apple wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Steve Wozniak. You know, I mean, that's just plain and simple. There were a lot of things that Jobs was responsible for, but Steve was the guy that built computers in his head.
We liberated some parts from Hewlett-Packard and Atari, and worked on a design for about 6 months and decided that we would build our own computer.
And Jobs said to me, I knew that with Wozniak's brilliant designs and my marketing skills, we could sell anything.
It was like, we'll both do it for fun, and even though we're going to lose some money probably, we'll just have been able to say we had a company.
I think what makes Steve Wozniak so special is he's just a really sweet guy that loves technology more than anyone I've ever seen in my entire life.
As far as Wozniak was concerned, the world was a great big sandbox with a lot of toys to play with.
He went on to become devoted to passing on his passions in mathematics and electronics.
Setting up classes for kids, giving them computers, giving them high quality instruction and teaching them that. Yeah, there was something they could do if they had the right resources, if somebody believed in them particularly.
Steve Wozniak is the original do-it-yourself guy. The guy who figures out how to do something. Here's a problem, what do I want to do? What would be some fun way to use technology to solve a puzzle? And then opens it up to everybody and changes the world.
So please welcome Steve Wozniak.
It's quite an honor to represent Poland in a way in the world of technology.
Absolutely. Steve, maybe we would like to start with a short introduction to our Polish students from high school in Warsaw here in capital city.
Yes. You know, I go back in my life to my own school years, high school, university, and intellectual freedom, being able to think for myself was the most important thing. My parents were very, they wanted us to be educated, but to think for ourselves and not be told, this is how you have to think. This is what you have to be interested in. And I had that kind of freedom. And in high school, there were no books on computers or digital technology, no books in the bookstores. So there were no classes in school. And I just came across by accident. I would discover a little journal somewhere. I would discover something else from a person who made a science fair project. And I taught myself how to design computers. By the time I graduated from high school, there were no computers in schools. There were no computers in homes. It was just, it was an esoteric word, but because I loved it in my heart, I just taught myself in my bedroom at home how to sit down on paper and design the lines that would make a computer over and over and over. And to me, it had to be fun. I loved doing it because I could think of tricks that were not in books, ways of doing things with fewer parts that were not in books, that almost violated the rules of how they were done, but made things simpler and simpler, and I judged myself better and better. When I was in high school, I would go to sleep some nights thinking about a difficult computer design problem. We had no classes on it, just myself. Or I would go to sleep thinking about a math problem from school. And I'd think real hard as I fell asleep, and in the middle of the night, I would wake up and have answers in my head, thinking while dreaming. And that was what I did a lot. And I got so good at computer design, I didn't think it was ever going to be a job. I didn't think there were careers designing computers. I knew I would be an engineer. I'd be a smart engineer. I had been good in electronics my whole life, but I didn't think engineers designed computers. I just thought they came out of weird places called research or the military. But I got very good. I knew that there was probably nobody else in the world that did as good as I did at designing computers when I was in high school, because I had tricks in my head. I could visualize all the ways, different little chips that were logical thinking elements, the ways they would connect and do things, and it was all in my head, and I'd think, here's a way to save a part and do something differently than before. You don't have to do it the way it's done in the past. And so I grew up also with tools. I could hook together from when I was very young. I built entire ham radio when I was 10 years old. The whole receiver and the whole transmitter from hundreds of parts, and I soldered them together. Soldering is how you connect wires and chips and things, but they didn't know chips back then. No chips, there were vacuum tubes. But learned how to solder all these parts together and learned a lot about it. So I was skilled at electronics, and building things is another big key. So I grew up not only being able to think of something I'd like, being able to sit on paper and design the early chips that would make that device, but also the ability to hook things together and build them. And I would build little projects that weren't worth any money. They weren't worth a company. They weren't worth the future as far as I knew. And I would build these things and show them off to friends. They'd say, wow, you built this little device that makes sounds like a police siren. And oh yeah, I was all proud of the stuff I could do. So it was really to show off. I was very shy, and I could never talk to people. I could never socialize in school. I could show off my designs, and people would look at me and talk to me. That was sort of my way to socialize, was being an inventor, not an engineer. I passed through the phase that you could be an engineer. Somebody tells you to design something, and you know because you've studied it. No, I became an inventor, just trying to think of little clever things that were fun, mostly jokes, and showing them to friends and using them. And that just became my life. By the time you're out of high school, your personality sort of settles for life, maybe in the college years, and that's who you're going to be forever. And some people are good engineers. They studied in school. They got good grades. They know how to answer the questions. Those are good engineers. A company will give them an assignment, and they go down and use what they've learned and design it, same way it's always been done in the books. But some people turn into inventors, and an idea comes in their head, something new that doesn't exist, maybe a better way to make a carburetor on an airplane. And they run into it, they want to go into a laboratory and be builders. Today, building would be mostly writing software, coding, and getting something done to show their idea is good and valid, and then they invent things that way. And that's the hallmark of an inventor, wants to make new things that don't exist, just out of curiosity. Doesn't necessarily have a job doing it, just comes up with ideas and does it on their own. And then that's the sort of person I was. I was very lucky for that.
Thank you for this introduction. And you mentioned about your experience and what were you doing at high school. So it is very early. But I'm not so sure if you knew that you would be the co-founder of a 3 million company. So my question is, what advice would you give to your 60-year-old if you could do that right now?
6-year-old?
16-year-old. Sorry, 16.
I would say, well, first of all, the most important thing in life is being a good person, not a bad person. You don't want to push other people around. You don't want to have more power than other people. You want to be relatively equal to everyone so you can communicate. But all of the good things you do all come from being truthful, honest. Honesty is the most important thing. Don't try to make up a story that sounds good. Tell what you know and what you do. Believe in yourself. Have self-confidence. Believe that you are good at certain things that you love to do. Secondly, I would tell myself, of course I did it anyway, but follow your heart. My parents let me follow my heart and do the things I wanted to do, and not necessarily, you should study this, you should go to this school, you should go to this college. None of that. My parents let me choose for myself, and that was very important. My father taught me a lot about different ways that people have money or don't have money, or the ways that they are educated in certain fields, or political or social. He would describe the framework, how tough people are, but he would never say, this is how you should be, Steve. He would say, you be educated, and you choose where you want to be. And I almost always chose that I just wanted to be kind of a middle-level person, in the middle. I didn't want to be on any extremes. I didn't want to believe that there were absolute rights and wrongs. And I was very lucky for that upbringing from my parents, and that was a lot involved with the way they brought me up. I was careful with my own children that I wanted to be the same and not put my values onto them. I wouldn't tell my children, you should go to this college, you should study this subject, you should work harder on this one. Let them find out and choose for themselves, and it's more meaningful. I would also let my, it's things like, don't put your values on them. I wouldn't tell them, here's what your religion has to be. No. Let them go through a life with friends, with school, with parents, all the various things in the world, and let them find what they love and follow your heart.
Thank you so much. That is so beautiful about you're talking about values. So now maybe let's touch upon the value and at the same time skill, teamwork. I hope you agree that setting up such a company as Apple is not just an individual process, it's a team effort. You and Steve Jobs, you set up Apple, and my question would be what we should do in the educational system to teach such skills.
Yeah, it's really odd. When I grew up, all the universities had business colleges, and they taught business. there were no entrepreneurship programs for starting companies. Around the start of personal computers, some devices allowed us to build computers that people could afford, not just the military, not just the huge companies. And this was, so this was a big change possible. And what was the question?
So my question is how to teach,
how to teach.
Teamwork.
So now the universities, business schools started entrepreneurship programs because of companies like Apple. 2 young people didn't have college degrees. I was a good engineer. I didn't drop out of school. I had 3 years of college, and I developed a product that was going to change the world, revolutionize the world. But we weren't in college. And then Google started with people just out of college, and Facebook while in college. All these young people started these companies that became very important. And that was never taught, especially in high school. So the colleges, the universities, started including entrepreneurial programs as a part of business school, learning how to make business decisions, but learning some of the keys to starting your own company if you have a good idea and a desire and you want to do it. What are some of the skills that are needed? What are some of the steps you have to take? If you really want a good idea, find yourself a good book. I recommend one called Fall in Love with the Problem. Fall in Love with the Problem by Uri Levine, who was the founder of Waze, the navigation mapping system Waze. And he speaks to you so clearly about how you have to think and rethink projects if you start a company. And that's one thing. Secondly, if you're just out of, let's say, the university, or you're in the university and you have some ideas and you want to start a company, that may not be enough. For example, if you get out of the university, the first thing is get a job. And it may not be where your heart is. You've been thinking about this one idea, a product that could exist, but it doesn't exist. And you could build it, but you're going to have to find other people to do that with you. It's never really one person, because for a startup company to be successful, it needs to have 3 main elements. And they're rarely in one person. Sometimes 2, sometimes 3. But you need business thinking, wanting to succeed, wanting to have a good company. You can make a lot of products that you could sell to many, many people, maybe even millions of people. That's number 1, business. Somebody has to want to succeed. And that's probably what comes across a lot of your minds sometimes. Second, you need marketing. You need to understand what products will sell and which ones won't. What features are good and not good, and which ones are worth a lot of money. And is this really worth even making a company over? And that's marketing thinking. What are the buyers like? How do the buyers think? And thirdly, you'll need strong engineering. And if you're in business school, you often think, oh, we'll think up an idea and we'll just hire the engineers if we can get some money to start a company. I don't like that idea at all. Engineers are so clever, solving problems, getting programs to work, getting hardware to work, working on it all the time. And they'll come up with other ideas you hadn't thought of to put in your product idea and make it even better. So include the engineers from the start. That's 3 disciplines: business, marketing, engineering, and they should work together tightly from the beginning. So that's okay.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for that insights and all those instructions and hints for our students. So now I think the question, how did you and Steve Jobs came up with the idea of a trillion company, million company for you were at high school, you were a student back then, right? So
no,
it was so early.
I was a great engineer designing the hottest products of the time. They were the equivalent. It was at Hewlett-Packard, designing handheld scientific calculators for engineers and scientists. And I was designing the hottest product in the world. And I didn't have a college degree. That's because I was so advanced in my mind. I had also, back in high school, I told my father, back when computers were just monstrosities that cost millions of dollars, I told him, someday I'm going to own a 4K computer. 4K bytes of memory was the minimum to have a computer that you could actually have an idea, type in a program, and solve it. And my father said it costs as much as a house. And I was stunned, and I said, well, I'll live in an apartment. I was going to have my own computer for myself, even though only companies and military, people with huge millions of dollars, had computers back then. And I was determined to. And I kept looking and studying and getting better at my designs. And I finally got to the point that I saw the way to build my own computer that was useful and affordable. And a whole bunch of other people were talking about computers are going to come in the home. We had a club. We had Stanford professors, University of California, Berkeley professors talking to us, telling us how life was going to change. People were going to communicate better. People were going to be educated better. And the person who knew computers was going to be important. And they told us that. And I was too shy to ever speak out in our group of about 200 people. So I listened. And it inspired me. And the first day of that club, called the Homebrew Computer Club, the first day I figured out in my head, I saw the formula of how to build this computer. And I'd been building a lot of projects, inventing a lot of projects, getting closer to it. Video games that used the television as an output device. Input and output cost a lot more than the processors then. And the way I got into that, I saw Pong in a bowling alley, and it said, television can be an output device, and everybody owns a television. I was also a skilled television engineer. If I hadn't had that skill, I wouldn't have put that together, and I made it digital. I could design a digital device that puts balls and paddles on the screen. I actually designed a game called Breakout for Atari. Breakout, where you hit a ball against bricks, and you break them. I designed it for Atari. Anyway, I worked my way up, and then I had a device I could talk to faraway computers. I could type words on a keyboard. And a faraway computer on what was called the ARPANET. There were 6 computers on the ARPANET. Now we have billions. It's called the internet. But the faraway computer could talk, and I designed the digital equipment that would put words on my TV set. Wasn't easy. You had to unscrew the back of a TV set, probe around with electronic equipment, figure out how the video signals, where they went. But I was a TV engineer, so I did that. And so I was already partway there. It's just that I had to take the little brain chip called a microprocessor and the right kind of memory chip that was affordable, which nobody else was trying to do to build these little inexpensive computers. And really, the computer they were trying to build was one that I, just after high school, had designed and built myself. And I got the parts given to me to build it. Little computer, you know, with big old front panel switches and lights for ones and zeros. Geeky, not for humans. And I built that device 5 years before. So now as 5 years past it, I'm building a computer. You type on a keyboard, and you see the output on a video screen. Every computer before this one, every computer before it had a big front panel of switches and lights. Every computer after this one, it was my own computer. I was showing it off at the Homebrew Computer Club. Steve Jobs didn't know it existed. He wasn't even around. And I was showing it off. I gave away my designs to everybody in the club. I said, you can build your own. I even helped people solder the wires together and build this computer for themselves. I wanted to start the revolution. And then Steve Jobs came into town one day. And there's a movie out there with Ashton Kutcher, and Steve Jobs finds me in a basement with a computer and takes me to the club. Don't believe it. That Steve had never been to the club. He didn't know my computer existed. I had been to every meeting of the club since it started. I was famous there. I was changing the world. So I took him to the club and showed him the excitement, and he said, we should start a company. The funny thing is, he was coming into town about once a year, and he'd see the latest thing I'd invented, and he would somehow find a way to get money for it. He had zero money. That was his drive. He had to always find a way to get money, and he would share it with me. So anyway, he said, start a company. And we'd sort of been a company for ages. By this point in time, I had the computer that would change the world. Why? There's a lot of logical thinking involved here. Why would people want a computer in their home? Computers back then, the only thing they did, they were in big, huge companies calculating sales figures and inventory and hiring and all that. Why would anyone do that in their home? People wanted games. Computer could play some really dumb games that type words of text and you answered. But my computer, the Apple II, which I had built all myself, all the hardware, all the software, all the accessories, everything, did it all myself alone, became the Apple II computer. It was the first time ever arcade games. Anyone in here play arcade games? Everyone plays arcade games. So it was the first time ever Atari was trying to start the industry of arcade games. But their games would be 100 chips, 1,000 wires, and a skilled engineer hooking them together for a year to make a new game. My Apple II computer was the first time arcade games were color, not just black and white games. And it was the first time they were software. A 9-year-old kid in a simple language called BASIC could make dots of color move on a screen and could write a program for a new good game in one night, one day, instead of an engineer taking a year to make a new game. This was a revolution in gaming, and we were just 5 years ahead of the rest of the industry. It's why our first logo was 6 colors. We were bringing color to the world. And so at first I said to Steve Jobs, I said, I have loyalty. I have loyalty to my friends. I don't desert them when they're in need. I work at Hewlett-Packard. I'm designing products at Hewlett-Packard as an engineer, and I love this company. I'm going to be an engineer for the rest of my life at Hewlett-Packard. I'm never going to try to move up the org chart of business, because to me, high levels of business running companies is political, and I would never be in politics. No politics. I even would never vote. From when I was 18 years old, I told myself why. And it was largely inspired by the Vietnam War. But so then I would never start a company and lose my job at Hewlett-Packard, where I was going to be an engineer for life, building equipment that engineers used. And so I pleaded with my company, Hewlett-Packard, to build the personal computer. I told them how it would be built, how much it would cost, how you would use it, how you would connect it to your TV. And they turned me down for the first of 5 times. All of us trying to build these inexpensive computers, all the big computer companies said, nah, never going to be worth any money. The small computers can't do the right things. So my company turned me down 5 times, and Steve and I had to start Apple and make it our little products on the side. And that was a lot of fun, and it was really great. But then with this Apple II computer, we had a chance to get big money. This computer was so far ahead of the industry and the rest of the world. An investor, Mike Markkula, was willing to put in enough money to build 1,000 computers. It was a huge number back then. It was unheard of. And he was willing to do it, but he said I had to leave Hewlett-Packard. And I had to decide on a certain day. And I went to the decision with Mike Markkula, our investor, and he was a third equal partner. He's not famous like me and Steve Jobs, but he should be. He's the guy that made Apple. And then Steve and I said, no, I'm not going to take the big money, not going to start Apple. I will not leave Hewlett-Packard. I love the company. I love who I'm with. It's a loyalty. Finally, a friend convinced me that I could leave Hewlett-Packard, and at Apple, I could just be an engineer. I didn't have to run the company. I didn't have to be political and take sides and hire and fire people. I could just be an engineer and make money from it. So that was the day I decided, yes, I will leave Hewlett-Packard. We will start Apple with the Apple II computer, the great arcade machine, and the rest is history.
Amazing. Yeah, you're a passion-driven person, and you did a lot. And I think it's enough, for not just one person career path, but for several couple of career paths. So congratulations. But my question is, as you were beginning your career, did you have a mentor? And what do you think is mentorship crucial for a learning process?
Yes, I never even knew the word mentor until just about before we were going to introduce our Apple II computer. Steve and I flew across the country. It was only my second time ever out of California. And we went to a little show called PC 76 in Atlantic City. And there were all sorts of other little groups of 2 young people trying to start up with low-cost computers. Nothing like what we had. And I stopped by a booth, and there was a young person, maybe your age, building some little cases out of metal, forming the metal that could be a computer case. And there was an older gentleman sitting there, and he said he was helping this one child learn how to do something, to have skills. And he called himself a mentor. Whoa, that's a really good thing to be. So I've always wanted to be a mentor. From when I was 11 years old, I told my father, I'm going to be an engineer, great engineer, but second, I'm going to be a 5th grade teacher. I wanted to be a teacher because to me teaching was important and a mentorship. And it's not that well known, but after Apple was very successful, I went and I wound up teaching young 10-year-olds to 13-year-olds for 8 years, teaching full-time, morning to evening, and teaching even 7 days a week at one point. I wanted to help these young kids have a better chance at life. And I would never let press near it. So there weren't public, stories in the press about it. But it was important to me. That was my way of being a mentor in a sense. These days, young people come to me frequently and say, we're thinking of starting a company. What should we do? And I always try to give them some of my opinions. I don't consider myself a business expert, but I'll give them opinions. Here's what I saw happen. Here's how you should think about things. And I do it because I want to be a little mentor, but not like full time. I don't have enough time to join a company. I get about a dozen requests every day of my life now through email. People that want me to join their company and be on their advisory board and associate myself with their company. I'm sorry, you're only one person. You're not a million. So I don't get into that. But mentorship is very important. When we started Apple, my mentors, my father was a great one. He was an engineer. And I loved what he did, and he never pushed engineering on us. I'm the only one, with my brother and sister, I'm the only one that became an engineer in life. I just fell in love with it. And my father would also teach me about values in life, as I explained. Later on, I had a great mentor, the investor in our company, Apple, Mike Markula, Finnish name. And he invested in Steve and I, but he was the adult in the room. Steve and I were young like yourselves, and we just wanted to have a business, and we had a great product that would turn the world over. But Mike Markula knew business, and he knew marketing. And he said, here's how you start a company. Here are the people you hire. Here's what your jobs are. Here's what everybody is supposed to be doing. And you should hire very professional people, not just young kids that don't really know it. And he was the one who made Apple in the early days. And Steve Jobs learned a lot of marketing principles from him and became an expert at marketing. Steve could never do any computer design. He wasn't an engineer. But Mike Markula was our mentor, telling us, here's how you do it. And we respected him highly.
Thank you so much. We're getting close to the end, so I want to touch on one more topic. We first met when you visited Poland in 2018, and I know that you are following the news, so my question is, what is your perspective on Poland? What should be next for us as Polish?
Yeah, I've always been brought up in America knowing that I had a Polish background, that my great-grandparents came from a part of Poland. I don't go back and research my own life history, but I was always proud of that. And I would speak to people and always say, I am Polish, and I'm so glad to represent Poland in a way with the great computer and engineering work I did. And it does mean something to me. So this is kind of like a past homeland of mine. You can think of 200 countries in the world, and are there any I'm closer to? No, except the United States where I grew up.
Yes, so, and also relating to Polish diaspora, what do you think? What is the superpower of Polish diaspora? We say that there are 60 million of Poles, because 38 in Poland, but more than 20 around the world. So what is your point on that?
Wow, I didn't actually know that till now. I knew about the Armenian diaspora, run into Armenians everywhere. And then I was told the other day that the largest city in Poland is Warsaw, and the next largest is Krakow, and the third largest is Chicago. So, and I remember once being in Chicago, and I'd sort of heard that that's where all the Wozniaks in the United States had come from, that area. So I looked in a phone book. Long ago, we had phone books, and under the W's, the Wozniaks were a whole column in the phone book. It was a very unknown name otherwise throughout the U.S. So I became aware that there was a large centers of Polish people in certain places. I don't count the numbers, but it's good to hear.
Yeah,
the
that's
diaspora
right.
is, yeah,
It's very
Polish
big.
people, well, like myself, bring back some of the heritage.
Right, right. So it's like so inspiring to hear from one of those, from the 60 million from you, this inspireful messages.
I'm so glad for that.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. So maybe the last question before we move to your questions, because I know that you have a lot of them in your minds. Also, teachers are welcome to ask questions because you are here and you are the most important and the hugest, the biggest responsibility to inspire all of them. I know that. So my question is, Steve, can you share with us you call yourself prankster, right?
I've been
Several
a
times.
big prankster because it's creativity. You think of an idea to make people to do something funny and to laugh about. And any joke, if you make up a joke, it's creativity. It came out of nothing but your brain.
Right, so share with us your favorite one you did in your life.
I've done so many hundreds, and I still do them to this day, all the time. So it's impossible to really pick one, but I'll share one. My first year of college. Since I was a ham radio operator, and I had learned all about transmitters, I built a tiny little handheld transmitter that when I turned it on in our college dorm, it would blacken every TV screen. It would black them out. It would blank them out. It would jam the TVs. And back in those days, we only had one color TV on the campus to watch TV. One color was in the basement of a girl's dorm. And so I went over there and said, I wonder how it's going to work. I turned on my jammer, and it didn't blacken the screen. It fuzzed it up. The picture got fuzzy. And then a friend of mine, without any planning, hit the TV with his fist. So I made it go good. And then every few minutes, I would jam it, and he'd hit it harder and harder until the TV worked. And for weeks, they would put a person in a chair next to that color TV, and it was their job to fix it when it went bad. And so I'd get them banging on it. They would adjust. There were dials on the old TVs in those days. They would adjust the dials. I'd make it go good, and they'd pull their hand away. I'd make it go bad. And they put their hand back on the TV, and I started playing with their bodies. One time I got them to stand up on a chair, holding the antenna in the air to make the TV work. And another time I got one guy to put his hand on the middle of the TV, and he was standing up and his foot was up on a chair. If he put his foot down, the TV went bad. If he pulled his hand away from the middle of the TV, it went bad. So they watched the last half of a Mission Impossible with a hand in the middle of the TV. And if you ever get my book, I Was, you'll read some of these pranks. But that one was really good because I never got caught. Nobody knew somebody might be playing with us. They just thought technology was going bad. Now in this digital age, it always does.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Okay, so now it's your turn. Your questions.
So I'm going to start. Perhaps it's going to help them out. I'm a teacher, so it's really honored to participate in this one today because I'm teaching about you on the English lessons. You are one of the ones like Fryderyk Chopin and Maria Skłodowska-Curie, just to let you know. And I always wonder, because you talk about your dreams, when you was dreaming and how did you dream to discover any particular things. And I'm dreaming in colors, tastes, and, sounds. And I'm just wondering, how are you dreaming? Are you dreaming in the numbers, in squares? How are you dreaming?
Okay. I dreamt for a long periods of my life. Once in a while, I do it now. And I'm just dreaming like in just pictures of connections of things, ideas, almost never in colors. I was told once you don't really dream in color, but I have one dream memory that was color, and it was kind of a nightmare at the end. But I can't describe it, but I didn't dream in colors and smells, just devices hooking together, or mathematics, mathematical symbols. Here's a way that might solve the problem. That was something I just grew up doing, and I never thought about it. I didn't think, well, I just thought it was kind of rare, but sometimes I run into other people, especially known inventors, that grew up dreaming solutions in the middle of the night. Now, I would wake up in the middle of the night with a solution, and sometimes by the morning, I couldn't remember what it was. I knew I had it in the night. So I started writing them down. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, write down a solution, then when I woke up in the morning, I could actually use it. And sometimes I discovered that my solutions were dumb ones I'd already rejected. Sometimes they didn't work, but it's kind of neat. The brain definitely was working while sleeping.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for the question. Another question, please.
So I know you started a new project, and I wonder what is your guilty pleasure after that? What you do in your free time that nobody can see?
Well, these days or other periods of my life? These days,
maybe both.
These days I travel a lot. I do a lot of speaking. That's my career. I gave away all my Apple wealth because when I was 18 years old, I decided I never wanted to be one of those super rich people that takes advantage of others. I didn't want it. That's one of the reasons I would never run Apple or maximize my wealth and my power. I just would not. I just gave it away to good things, museums and things like that. But what do I do in my free time? As I grew up, I was very skinny and I was very athletic, very good at athletics. I did pole vaulting in high school. And I did a lot of sports and got very good at them. And a product called the Segway came out. Segway had two wheels, you could stand on it, and a pole, and you could lean your body to make it move. Incredible device, and it was expensive, but some of us geeks, technology geeks, a lot of us from Apple, we bought this new geeky product, the Segway, and then we started meeting on weekends trying to decide what can we do with it, and we invented a sport, Segway Polo. And we started making the rules, the equipment, the sizes of courts, and then Segway Polo spread to other countries, New Zealand and then Europe. And the 5 California teams got really lousy because they had better athletes in Europe. And just a couple months ago, I was in Cologne, Germany for the World Championships. And it's named after me. It's called the Woz Challenge Cup. And we still ride our Segways and play Segway Polo. So that was one of my side things. I don't really have a set of things, and they often change. I love music my whole life. Long before today's big festivals that you hear about, Bonnaroo, Coachella, all those, I put on a 3-day festival back when it was not being done. And I sold 1 million tickets over 2 years. All the best top groups in the world, the David Bowies and the like, and that was a big thing. I like to do things that are unusual, firsts. So we spent a lot of money to make an amphitheater that could hold 500,000 people listening to music. And it was the largest stage ever for a concert in the United States. It was called the US Festival in California. I did it. Largest stage ever. It was the first time ever we put speakers out into the amphitheater with delayed sound to match the sound from the stage. It was the first time ever in the United States that we had a big screen, a video screen, over a stage. It had never been done in the United States before my concert. And now I did just a lot of unusual things that come up. I want to go out and do them, and I'll make sacrifices to do them if they're kind of like first things. And right now, my wife and I love to go to concerts, music, all the time, but we won't go to any of the big groups, you know. We won't, no longer. I started the big amphitheater in Silicon Valley with a famous rock promoter, Bill Graham, and I went to every big group in the world. I saw them for 27 years of my life, and I said, no, I want to go to little tiny places where you see little groups that have come up with a good song, but they're not well known. And so ever since, for the last 15 years, I only go to the tiny places with almost no exceptions. Every once in a while, a group like the Grateful Dead will want me on stage with them, but I don't go to the big places. And my wife and I will go to dozens of concerts a year. Just hear songs, but we listen to songs that have meaning in the words, about life, things you can really relate to. So they're more like sung poems to us, the ones we like. That's something we do a lot, and I travel a lot. I fly the world to pass my messages on to people.
Amazing. Also music, yeah, for our ears today.
Music, just my head can get into heaven. Beautiful sounding music, the right.
Your
line,
words
perfect.
are like music, I mean, you know, for us.
Yeah.
Beautiful music. Thank you for that.
Oh yes.
Yes. So, what is the next question, please?
Why did you only wanted to be an engineer in your company? Because you said that you wanted to be an engineer, and Steve Jobs became a boss.
Steve Jobs and I had been selling my stuff for 5 years. So he was a businessman that wanted to do business. He wanted to be famous. He wanted to be one of those people like Shakespeare, or he wanted to be Isaac Newton. He wanted to be known for the world, but he didn't. We went to the same high school in different years, and he didn't have the teachers I had. And I had all the high-level classes. So he didn't have academic background. And he wanted to find a way someday, and that was to have, a company based on really me. When I was 18 years old, Vietnam War, some things happened in my life I won't get into now. You could buy my book, I Was. But I decided I would not be political, and running companies at the top gets political, trying to get jobs that other people are trying for, or criticizing people and, being nasty to them, and I wouldn't ever do that in my life. So when we started the company, the only way I started it was I can run engineering, do my engineering, create all the things the company needs, the products, and I'll let Steve Jobs and the others do the business side of it. For the first 10 years of Apple, this is what makes a company. The first 10 years, only one product ever made money for us. My Apple II computer. All the computers that Steve Jobs kept trying to create, he wasn't a computer engineer. They all failed for marketing reasons and technical reasons, and they all failed hard. Even the Macintosh failed really hard. So for the first 10 years, only one product made money. We started the company with a great product that came from engineering. And so that's all I ever wanted to be in my life. I only one time ever had one technician even working for me, reporting to me. I'm just like the sole inventor. If I come up with an idea, I can go to work and create it. I did a lot of things for that Apple II computer. A lot of favorite projects, making it work in the European television system of the old days, and making it work Arabic from right to left and all that. A lot of favorite projects I had that really made that computer great. I did all the hardware, all the software, and I did an unusual thing. You write a program. Any of you write programs? You type them into a computer and see if it works. You get an output. Okay. I couldn't afford a terminal that would call a computer and type my programs in. So I wrote the programs it was in computer language, not in any other language. It was the processor language. And I'd write it on a piece of paper, and then I would figure out what ones and zeros it had to be equal to. And I'd write the ones and zeros down, and then I would type the ones and zeros in and get it working. The entire 8 KB of code, maybe 150 pages of program, never got typed into a computer for the entire Apple II, and there was never a bug in it. When you do something yourself and you don't trust others, usually you can make things that are almost perfect. So anyway, I was an engineer from my youth because I was good at math in 3rd grade. It's like 9 years old. I was good at math, and I said, oh my gosh, the teacher said I'm smarter than the girls. I'm a math person. And I took the math with my electronics, discovering these little electronic parts you could hook together and make devices that did little things. I just got good at it. I just wanted to. There was no courses, no classes, no reason, no expectation that it would be ever worth money, except I knew I'd be an engineer. I just didn't think they had the computer design or whatever is something you ever had a job. So accidents, and Steve Jobs definitely wanted to be important, and he had to be up with the people running the companies, making the decisions, what we'll do, what we won't. Just never had any success for 10 years. Steve Jobs did, yeah.
Thank you so much. We have time for just one more question, so please.
I have 2 questions. First question, what's your favorite Apple product? Yes.
Apple product? I have a few favorites throughout the years. The Apple II changed the world. I did that. But I also like the watch very much. It does so much of what the computer does. I go between my watch and a computer, and I really don't use the phone. I don't text and all that, only for photos. Okay. There was a product we had once called the Cube. It was kind of a cubish computer with a hole up the middle, and the heat would go up the hole like a chimney. It had no fan to cool it, but it ran fast processors. And that was my home computer, and I just loved that Cube so much. Almost nobody's ever heard of the Cube. It's not that well known, but I love the engineering of it, and the mixed with the design and the looks and all that.
This was the
second question.
Oh, yeah, try.
What was your reaction when you get known that your company breaks $3 trillion value?
Yeah, I'm kind of proud of how it's run today from a business perspective, but it's not really based on products. Yes, the iPhones are all great, and maybe they're number one in the world by a little amount. But no, I'm very glad for the people that are running the company today, making good decisions, keep the company rolling, and we don't track you. We don't take your data and sell it to advertisers. I'm so proud of Apple for that. And I'm also proud of Apple for another thing that isn't really $3 trillion, diversity. First of all, Silicon Valley is the most diverse place in the United States. Different types of people. Why? Turns out that of all the hundreds of counties in the United States, Silicon Valley, Santa Clara County is one of 10 counties where more people speak non-English at home, more than half the people. And that's because they've come all over the world to participate in the computer industry and all that. So we just have all different people around us, and everyone's a person. You don't ever look at them and say, oh, you're a different color, you're a different ethnicity. It's just so used to it. And Apple makes that point of that in our employees and in our customers. And we're also the first company of all the big tech companies in Silicon Valley. We're the only one that says equal pay for women for the same job. Only one. Those kind of steps are very important, so I believe very much in Apple's current management. Doesn't mean that I think everything Apple does is good or the way I would want it. You know, I'm truthful, so I'll speak out anytime. But I'm also the only person in the world that got a paycheck from Apple every week since we started the company. I never left. It's another form of loyalty.
Yeah, so that was tricky, 2 questions. Okay, thank you so much. And now, please let me convey you a tribute from our Minister of Education and Science.